How do you create an entire video and go on a rant for so long only to arrive to the point and then miss it completely?
What's good, cousins, and welcome back again on another episode today. How are you all doing? I hope you guys are doing well, and if you are joining for the very first time, thank you so much for being here today. Today's video is actually very funny because to think that after 400 good years we are still having this type of conversation. This guy said it is so dumb that a lot of people are believing that African American is a race, like there is nothing like African American. He mentioned in his video that African American does not exist, and he was trying to explain this dumb thing that he's talking about that I don't even know where to place it. I'm going to roll the clip in a few seconds so we can listen to what this guy has to say, because this person literally has to be looking for some clouds to blow their channel or something. It can never be real. So let me roll the clip so we all can see where this all started from.
Bro, I don't know if Americans are genuinely confused or they're just thick, because this blew my mind. And if you're not American, this will probably blow your mind too. So I'm from England, right? But most English people are usually white, just like Americans are usually white too, okay? Keep that in mind, this is very important. As you can see from looking at my skin, I am not just white, I have black in me, which means I come from African descent. To be more specific, Ghanaian descent. Keep this in mind. I was outside in America and I seen a fellow melanin brother. Now, when I'm looking at melanin people, I can usually tell what part of Africa you are from your features. And I saw this brother that I thought might have been Ghanaian too. Big up my Ghana brothers, by the way. But was I so wrong? So I proceeded to ask, yo bro, what part of Africa you from? He said, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I was like, oh word, but like, where are your parents from? Atlanta, Georgia. So what about your grandparent? Atlanta, Georgia. So my next question was, how are you black? There's a lot of black people in Atlanta, Georgia, son. So you're telling me that you're not from Africa, but your skin is saying otherwise? Yep, proud African American, straight out of Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. And before I could ask him any more questions, brother, I answered it for myself. These people genuinely think that African American is its own race. And this is actually deep, bro. These African Americans are slaves, children. Yes, you heard me right. So I'm sorry to break it to you, but there's no such thing as African Americans. Your ancestors were just taken from Africa to America, brainwashed, and completely forgot where they came from. And that's the truth. So maybe go look at your history before saying I'm African American.
What do you guys think about what he said? I don't understand why he's in his room shouting and saying all of those things that does not make any sense. This is something that happened 400 years ago. They were brought into this white man's land, and all their identity, their culture was forcefully taken away from them, and they have to start creating another one that a lot of people, like his own people, have stolen from them till today, and he's here saying African Americans do not exist. I want to believe he's chasing some clouds because it cannot be for real. He said their ancestors were taken away from Africa, brought into the United States, and they were brainwashed and completely forgot about Africa. If they really forgot about Africa, there will be nothing like African America. Like, I don't even understand the argument he's trying to bring up, but it's not making any sense. Like, they were brainwashed, they forgot about Africa, but they are called African American. Like, do you not get it? There has been generation after generation after generation that were born after these slaves were brought there that don't even have the opportunity to probably visit Africa, but they know that place as their root. And it's just there arguing and shouting in the room. So many people were able to school him in the comment section, and there are some people as well sticking to his video that I would like you guys to see. So without wasting much time, let's get down to how people school this guy that said that African American does not exist, or maybe he skipped some of his history classes. So let's just get right into it.
My next question was, how are you black? There's a lot of black people in Atlanta, Georgia, son. So you're telling me that you're not from Africa, but your skin is saying otherwise?
Y'all know what time it is. Okay, it says here you have a $1,500 rent fee that's due at the beginning of this month.
Why? Rent for what?
What you mean, why? You made this video for no reason, and we clearly in your head rent free. We don't even know y'all like that. And here it says you got a $300 clout chasing fee.
A clout chasing fee for what?
What is you talking about? Clearly you're chasing clout because literally all your videos have nothing to do with us, but I guess your views ain't looking the best, so you decided to make a video on us. So we'll take that in cash or money order. We also have a $200 ignorance fee because clearly you ain't did your research on why African Americans don't know where We're sick of explaining it to you, but clearly you ain't gonna learn. So now we're charging y'all $200. You know what? I'm getting pissed. $400. $400. Now the rest of you crumpet eating beans and toast for breakfast having heifers and dudes out there, shut up unless you do some darn research. Shut up.
Was taken from Africa to America, brainwashed, and completely forgot where they came from. And that's the truth. So maybe go look at your history before saying I'm African American.
How do you create an entire video and go on a rant for so long only to arrive to the point and then miss it completely? I recommend you learn the difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality, but really you need to understand what happened to those African people when they were brought over. Like, families were broken up, they were torn apart, their names were stripped, their culture was stripped, they had a religion foisted upon them to brainwash them. And you can't go back and find out who your tribe or your country is. I have to pay money for a service like Ancestry.com and then spend hours going back through the timeline and looking up all these people and doing research on documents and everything, and then I can only go back about 5 generations. And even if we do all of that, most of us hit the same roadblock. Take me, for instance. My name is Jonathan Gibbs. My dad's name is Johnny Gibbs. My grandpa's name was John Gibbs. I don't know what happened here, but it skipped a generation, but then my great-great-grandfather's name is John Gibbs. All up and through my father's side of the family tree, men are named John Gibbs or some iteration of that. And what I found out is that it all goes back to this place called John Island. And I'm gonna let you know right now, it wasn't no black people owning a whole place called John Island. So of course the everyday person is not going to know which tribe or country that they're from. And their families have been in this land, the United States of America, since the 1600s. So they are Black American or African American. But within that name, there's an acknowledgement of the Africanness of it. So what part of it doesn't make sense to you? Of course they have been over here for 400 years, but at least they still acknowledge the Africanness about it. It's just because of the circumstances, they don't know any more than that. So what are you going off about, really? What are you mad about?
More specific, Ghanaian descent.
And see, this is where the problem starts. Because you're in fully black people's business. Okay? Because you only get to talk about this kind of stuff for half the year. Your time ran out. Okay? So now you gotta go so hard for us to believe that you the blackest of the black. And you're not. But let's continue.
America, and I seen a fellow melanin brother. Now, when I'm looking at melanin people, I can usually tell what part of Africa you are from your features. And I saw this brother that I thought might have been Ghanaian too. Big up my Ghana brothers, by the way. But was I so wrong? So I proceeded to ask, yo, bro, what part of Africa are you from? He said, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
Now, let's be clear. You need to be careful with using that fellow melanated brother thing a little too quickly, okay? Because you're not fully anything. That's number one. Second of all, we just can't believe that you can look at someone and tell what part of Africa they come from. Especially because you yourself are not from Africa, okay? You're from the UK. Let's be clear. And we just want to know how many times you went on Ancestry.com to figure out what part of Africa you came from with your white parent. Okay? While you waving that Ghanaian shirt all up in our face in the UK.
Georgia. So what about your grandparent? Atlanta, Georgia. So my next question was, how are you black? There's a lot of black people in Atlanta, Georgia, son. So you're telling me that you're not from Africa, but your skin is saying otherwise. Yep, proud African American, straight out of Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. And before I could ask him any more questions, brother, I answered it for myself.
And see, herein lies the problem. Y'all be getting y'all ass whooped trying to understand the different definitions between culture, heritage, and race. That man told you he was black several times. Several times. And he is, in fact, black. Culturally, though, he is African American. But he is still black. Woo! I know that's a lot for y'all to take in all at once. Not too much.
African American is its own race. And this is actually deep, bro. These African Americans are children. Yes, you heard me right. So I'm sorry to break it to you, but there's no such thing as African Americans. Our ancestors were just taken from Africa to America, brainwashed, and completely forgot where they came from.
So who's going to tell him? Who's going to tell him? half of your ancestors were also subject to enslavement at the hands of the other half of your ancestors. You thought Ghanaian people just dropped into the UK out of the sky? You don't think they came over there on a boat too? Please, your side is showing. I don't know, man. School just ain't schooling right. Okay? Because the history they got y'all learning is not historying right. Something is not making sense. And I damn sure ain't about to sit up here on the internet and argue with somebody who only got half the struggle. Okay? Some of our parents stuck it out. Okay? Some of us got two, not one, but two black parents. Please.
Bro, I don't know if Americans are genuinely confused or they're just thick, because
I had to move to the other room to record this because I'm at work and this is literally hilarious. You know, it used to make me mad that people couldn't seem to fathom the fact that, like, African Americans actually exist, and it's not just like, oh, I'm Ghanaian, but I don't want to talk about it for some reason. It's like, you very clearly know that the transatlantic slave trade existed, but somehow, like, along the way, certain things became unclear. Like, how do you not understand not only that, one, people from different parts of Africa were put together in a way that there would be no one country that you'd be from technically, but also, how is it easy to comprehend that Jamaicans exist, Haitians, people from the other islands, people from Colombia, Brazilians? How is this easy to understand? But the concept of, like, African Americans existing and just being like, yo, I'm black, how is that so hard? And I notice it's only, like, Black Brits in particular who say this, but also, I mean, I've seen it from people from Africa, but they generally get that it's like, okay, you're not from Kenya or Ghana or wherever, like, they understand that. But I think that because maybe in the UK in particular, they only really have, like, second, third gen maybe immigrants are like, oh, I know where my family background is. Obviously, you know, because they just came over. It's been like 400 plus years, bro. The first people came over in like 1619. You think that they were keeping records back then of what slaves came from where? They were not, I can assure you. People have been trying to find them for a while now. It's like, what is so hard to get? Like, are you genuinely so stupid? By the way, we're the stupid ones here. Not someone who can't understand this vague, or not vague, this very clear concept. Like, they think Jamaicans an ethnicity, but people like a few 100 miles away, somehow that's a different story. Like, please, sir, please. I just think it's funny. More than that, though, I just think, like, this really relates and kind of undermines and kind of puts a confusing lens on, you know, all the people who are, you know, African American, you know, Black Americans who do all of this, like, Africana stuff and be like, yo, we need to really embrace our roots. We need to really get back to that sense. And also all of the traditions that were held through slavery, that were people were hanging on to their traditions that they had originally had and passed those on through generations. And that's how we got different genres like hip hop, like ragtime, like jazz, etc., in different dance moves. Like, do you not see the relationship between these things? Like, people making a point to hold on to these things and them manifesting in modern culture, and you somehow can't understand that that is them trying to hold on to their culture. Like, oh, how did you just forget everything? They don't know their roots. Bro, people are grasping onto whatever they can to maintain any sort of semblance of some sort of link to Africa. What do you not get? You see a bunch of people wearing dashikis. What do you think they're doing? Bro, think. Use your head. But at the end of the day, like I said, this shit is just funny. It's just plain funny. Like, how do you do all of this mental gymnastics and then think you're the smart one here? Like, this is a very cut and dry issue. Slaves came to America, married someone or got with someone who was not from their own, you know, tribe or what would now be a sovereign nation, thanks to the British, cough, cough. And then 400 years went by, and now their descendants have been there in Atlanta, Georgia for generation upon generation. Like, what the fuck you want, bro? Fuck you want?
Bro, I don't know if Americans are genuinely confused or they're just thick, because...
Okay, please excuse my attire on this evening because it is all of 1:30 a.m. and I'm fully supposed to be in the bed. And I was on my way to bed until I saw this bullshit floating around Twitter. And yes, I'm going to still call it Twitter because what the fuck is an X? We don't acknowledge him or her or they. I refuse to acknowledge the rename. Continuing. I was perusing my last perusal of the evening. And then I saw this bullshit that came before this stitch. Go watch his comments in full if you like before you partake in this read. But let me just say something. I'm so sick and tired of other black people from around the world in areas that are not the United States of America giving us shit, giving us utter and complete obtuse shit about who we are, about our identity, about what we call ourselves. This young man, who gotta be young as fuck and telling us to read a book, but clearly he needs to read more than a few, has the audacity to say that there's no such thing as African American. He sees a melanated brother like himself, and he asks where he's from, and the brother says, I'm from Atlanta. And he's like, okay, where are your parents from? Atlanta. Where are your grandparents from? Atlanta. And he's like making the argument that it's stupid to call yourself African American when you're melanated. And then also coming for us as an entire group of people as though we don't have a history that erased our culture, erased our roots from us. He essentially puts the responsibility of us not knowing what country we descend from on us. A young man from the UK, whatever your name is, whoever else is watching who shares that sentiment, let me break something down for you right quick. And yes, I could put this a lot more eloquently if I wanted to. I could write you a dissertation with my full lexicon in use. But I am electing not to do that on tonight because, again, it's late. So for now, here's the layman's terms for you. Our ancestors were taken away from their lands involuntarily. They were packed on ships that were hot, sweaty, gross, disgusting, packed in like tuna in the bottom of ships. Half of them died on the way to their destination. But oh, by the way, for those who made it, they were put into involuntary servitude via chattel slavery. And since Brother Man wants to talk about let's learn the history, learn your history, well, let me teach you some history. What happened when they got off those ships? Not only were they sold to plantations where they worked the land for free, where they were literally worked to death, or beaten, or maimed, or raped, and everything else in between that's horrendous. The most horrendous human treatment you can think of happened, okay? But at the same time all of that is happening, our ancestors were essentially taught to let go of any semblance of their original tribes, country, and identity as a means of survival. When they got here, they were stripped of their ancestral names and they were given Anglican names, so to speak, basically. Whatever the white people wanted to call them is what they fucking called them, okay? This scene is depicted in Roots when Kunta Kinte gets to America and he's like, my name is Kunta. And they're like, no, you gonna be called Toby from now on. And he's like, no, my daddy called me Kunta. Y'all gonna call me Kunta. They beat him within an inch of his life. And the only reason why he survived is because somebody else intervened. But even that was dangerous because not only as a slave who is being taught and being conditioned to believe that you are nothing. You are nothing. You started out as a person, yeah, before we found you. But now that we done snatched you up, this is your life now. And if you want to keep breathing on this earth, then you gonna shut the fuck up. You gonna answer what we call you. And if you act like you show any indication of that shit you was doing before we brought you over here, we gonna beat it out of you. And if you don't break, if you don't allow us to beat it out of you, we're going to kill your children. We're going to kill your spouse that you've chosen. If you're even allowed to marry or mate. Because really, again, chattel slavery, we were treated like animals. They were literally the equivalent of like cattle. So we talk about marriage, partnerships, whatever. It was really about mating to create more babies, to create more slaves. Do you see where I'm going with this, mate? I say all that to say that if you are fortunate enough to know what African country, what African tribe your people come from, congratulations. There are so many of us who long to know that information, and we don't have a choice about whether or not we know that information. And you might argue, yeah, you do. You got a choice. Do you know how much digging Black Americans have to do to figure that shit out? It usually requires years of research. At some point, you got to end up on somebody's grandmama's granddaddy's farm that used to be a plantation, where your people worked the land, where your people were buried in nameless graves, where your people's blood, sweat, and tears literally cultivated another family's wealth. And by the way, can we talk about the mindfuck of those families attaining their wealth off your people and your people still having their last name? Because let me tell you, on my daddy's side, it's two sets of Griffiths. One of them's white down in Alabama and the other one's black. And the white ones pretend that the black ones don't exist. Since we want to talk about history and we really want to go there, since Black Americans, it's our fault. Anyway, it requires going to the source. You got to dust off the bookshelves that are decorative now, but that hold slave ledgers from back in the day. And you got to trace that shit line by line to find out who your ancestors were, number one. And hopefully, hope and pray that you find some kind of record that leads you to a ship, that leads you to a sailing plan from back then, that leads you to where your people came from. For the average Black American who's trying to survive, who's trying to make it in this shit-ass economy, who's trying to keep from getting locked up in the school-to-prison pipeline, and all the other subsequent things that came out of slavery, so that they can continue to find new ways to enslave our bodies, even though they can't work us without pay anymore, legally. You trying to fight through all of that, you really ain't got time to be trying to track down no plantation and no dusty-ass book with your people's information in it. And even if you are so lucky as to find some time to do that research, it's hard as fuck, because when you get back so far, and I'm saying this as somebody who has tried to do the genealogy research, it has to take breaks, because I'll spend a few months on it and other priorities take precedent. When you get so far back, all you find is first names. And remind you, those first names are names that were made up by other people that have no tie or semblance or indication of who these people were and where they originally came from. So please save it. If you are not a Black American, please get off your high horse. I'm so happy for you that you know your lineage, and I wish so wholeheartedly that I could have that too, but I ain't got that right now. Don't punish me even more for it.
What do you guys think about what the host said? I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. I can't even believe that you think what he said was right, because I don't understand him addressing a group of people who have existed before he was born and telling them that they are brainwashed, they forgot where they come from, and they are not supposed to be calling themselves African Americans. He said they do not hold on to the Africanness in them, but these are the same people you're calling African American. If they do not hold on to their African part, you will not hear that African being in their name, like African Americans. You won't hear it in. This comment said, do they not realize our ancestors arrived in this hellscape 400 years ago? Yes, we are of African descent, but we are very far removed from Africa. Another person said, why are they asking us? Why don't they ask the Europeans that created the idea of race as we know it today? Exactly. Why is he not asking his own people? Because he is there acting like he's right. And it's also funny, because imagine just filming the video thinking you want to really drop a bomb, but at the end of the day, you end up being the dumb one here. Another person said, European countries don't claim they are Black citizens and have tricked them into that being a good thing. And here he is on TikTok saying some groups have been brainwashed. He has not even said through himself well. Another person said, I'm pretty sure it is like a requirement in order for you to be able to live in England to be unbelievably dumb. I like this one. This person said, it's almost like they deliberately try not to understand that our culture is different and our background as well since slavery. I want to believe that he did not take our time to actually understand, because he was saying they need to read on where they come from, they need to do this and that, but the slightness of how this African American thing was created and formed and stuff, you couldn't even get it. And to think he was standing in his room shouting and being wrong all along is just very, very funny. Like someone says, his views are probably down, maybe his rent is due as well, and he just needs a little bit of clout because there is no video on his page that is addressing anything that has to do with history, race, or whatever. He just out of the blue made that video. Maybe they are right. Maybe his rent is actually due and he just needs some traffic to get those coins, you know. I would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you all so much for coming around. Please make sure you subscribe and turn your bell notification on as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, and I love you guys.